What's up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Growing Up Gaming, your weekly podcast where we meet a new person of the internet to discuss their childhood with gaming and how it inspired their lives today. My name is Mitch Power. Again, thank you guys each and every week for listening, for subscribing, for hopefully reviewing the show. Let me know what you like and don't like. Any feedback is welcome. I want to make this show as best as I can. This week on the show, we actually have a guest. His name is Josh Epstein. I should actually say Dr. Josh Epstein. He actually has a doctorate, so he can be called doctor, whatever. I met this man on the Comedy Button Facebook group, and he gets on the show to discuss everything that happened with him in his early childhood and how all of that has led to what he's doing now, and, you know, how he's a doctor and whatever. I got a doctor on the show. I can't complain. If you guys want to be on the show, go ahead and send me a tweet at the podcast Twitter page, which is at GUG Podcast. And again, if you guys like the show, please remember to share it with your friends. Get the word out. The more people we have listening, the more potential guests I have in the show, and I want to have everybody on to tell their stories. Without further ado, let's go ahead and get things started with Josh Epstein, PhD or doctor or whatever you want to say. So, as far as it goes, do you remember how old you are when you first started playing games and stuff?
I don't really remember how old I was, but I know that it was like very, very early elementary school. My brother borrowed a Game Boy from a kid who lived, in the neighborhood, and I remember playing Super Mario Land and for like days, And then when the friend took the Game Boy back, I remember having a feeling of like, well, what the hell do I do now?
Just like bummed out, having withdrawals, like, I need my Mario Land.
Yeah, I was like, I don't want to play with toys anymore. Like, I want to play Mario. And then, from there, we had other friends who would bring over systems. Eventually, our parents allowed us to buy Game Boys. And then for, like, years, we, tried to get the N64. Just whenever friends that had it came over, we would play with it. GoldenEye a lot, So I didn't really get into Zelda or anything until we actually got our own. And the way that we got our own was my brother wrote like this 3-page essay about like how we would be all right, if we got the N64. He was like in third. I don't remember how old we were, but pretty young. So he wrote this 3-page essay, and I remember like I came home from school one day and he like pulled me into the computer room and he was like, Josh, like, our parents are going to let us get an N64. And I remember asking, like, were they drunk?
Yeah, that's a good time to ask parents questions.
Yeah.
Say, no, you told me you would do this. Yeah, that's what you got to do.
So, I remember going to the store and we split it, one of the N64s that came with the gray and that see-through purple controller.
Right.
And I don't really remember what we got with it, but, that started Zelda and GoldenEye still. Perfect Dark. I have a N64 collection sitting over on my bookshelf.
Nice.
Rayman 2, a game called Buck Bumble that I think is really underappreciated.
I would say it's underappreciated because I've never even... Like, I used to work at Game Crazy, and I remember a bunch of games. I don't remember that game. Like,
Buck
I bet
Bumble?
you if I remember, like, pictures, though. You know what I mean? Like, if I saw the
Yeah.
cart, I'd probably be like, oh, yeah, that game. But, God forbid, I've never played it myself. How old are you?
I am almost 30.
Okay. So at least you're in similar age group as me, because, so it's cool, though, that your first console was actually, that you experienced was more a Game Boy, because, like, a lot of people... It was more home consoles, like, going to a friend's house and playing games there and stuff. But, like, it's also really cool that a friend let you borrow his Game Boy, because back then that was like your prized possession. Like, I wouldn't let that thing out of my sight.
It honestly might have been like we just had it for the afternoon. I don't remember.
It felt. Like
I just remember sitting on the stairs playing it, and then sitting on the stairs not playing it.
You're just so sad. It went by so fast, right?
Yeah.
So then, obviously, though, it's cool, though, that you had siblings and stuff that would help, that you played games with and everything. Would you say, so it was actually his friend, though, that let him borrow it. So, at least thankful him and everything. When you guys, so the good thing, too, is, like, 64 was kind of that console that it was so focused on, like, couch co-op and multiplayer and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Do you remember any games that you guys played together? Like, obviously, you were just mentioning GoldenEye, Perfect Dark, stuff like that.
Yeah, so there's actually a game that we still play together when we get together, and my brother's actually borrowing the N64 at the moment. We play Rush 2, which is another underappreciated game. It's a terrible, terrible racing game, but it is the best car stunt game ever.
Right.
It's got like the wackiest physics. It has like a terrible score system, but if you hit... There's this stunt level, and there's all these little like tracks for you to go on and jumps and stuff like that, like random polygonal objects to launch your car off of. And if you do it just right, your car will like spin like 25 times before you hit. Like do like a somersault 25 times, and like you'll like roll on the ground. And
my god!
And then it's score. Like if you can get a score of like 75 at the end of the game, like you're doing great. And I've gotten like 150 and stuff like that, and like my brother just sent me a picture the other day that was like 250.
That's so funny.
Yeah, it's like the worst racing game ever made, but like it's just one level, this one stunt level that's in it. It just makes it amazing. It's so much fun.
It's funny too, because like now games, like some games are doing the ridiculous physics on purpose. Like they know that's the key to the game. Like games like Octodad and I Am Bread and all those crazy games.
I love those. And Rocket League, like I guarantee you that the people who played Rocket League played Rush 2. I'm just hoping that maybe one day somebody makes like another game like that, like it's like a mode in Rocket League or something. It really seems like the kind of thing that should have like a cult online following, and I've just not been able to find it. I think I am the following.
Yeah, right. Like you're going to be the one on the Reddit creating the subreddit for it. Yeah. And there's going to be like you, your brother, and that's about it.
my girlfriend's really good at it now.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, like I remember the certain games having those physics. Like I remember Cool Borders 2 on PS1, where that was the game before they tried to go more realistic, but like you could hold down the button to jump off of like a jump or a cliff or whatever, and you could just tap the D-pad over and over and over and over and over and over again, and then when you let go of X, it's like spinning a top. It's just like like you just spin completely unrealistically, and you're just like, no one can do a 7,000 off this cliff, like, or whatever the math ends up being. Like, it was so ridiculous. But yeah, I remember that type of stuff. But yeah, now you get the games that have those types of crazy physics and stuff. But again, like, I like it though, because now people are coming back to retro style games that are like that, with people doing like the NHL game, and I'm sure somebody will come up with like an Outrun or like a Rush 2 like style graphics, but just with those ridiculous like graphics and the ridiculous like realistic women like they used to look like in Mortal Kombat, like starting the race, like go, like all that ridiculous stuff. I
forget, it's not rotoscoping, it's something else, digitalization or something of photos and stuff, right?
I remember that was the coolest shit in the world back then. You were like, oh my god, playing Mortal Kombat, those look like real people. Then like later on you realize like they were real people, just like basically pictures of frames. I'm like,
just
this is
low
amazing.
res pictures. Yeah,
it was always the best. So then you did you ever stick with the Game Boys and like all that, or like did you continue that trend with handhelds, or when you got to 64 did you basically just stay home console from there on?
Yeah, I mean that's pretty much what happened. I mean, we played Game Boy for a long time, right? I mean, I remember getting Pokemon and all that, so I played that for a good amount of time. But the next handheld that I got was the DS that I got from my friend for like $50 with like all his games or something, like right at the end of its life. So yeah, we mostly just stayed home console. And PC. We played a lot of PC games as well.
Yeah, that's one thing I feel like so many people played PC, and I just feel bad because I straight didn't. Like, I am sure there's a ton of stuff I missed, which now they're kind of porting over a bunch of stuff to like consoles, like the good, like all the old adventure games and the Tim Schafer games and like LucasArts and all that stuff. Like those are all coming over, but like, yeah, I mean, I feel bad because I missed out like the Counter-Strike days and the Battlefield 1942 days and like all those types of games.
I mean, we played a ton of Doom and Marathon, and we would play them together, my brother and I. You know, he would do the movement, and I would do the shooting.
There you go. That works. As long as
it was a lot of fun.
Man,
that was pretty great.
So then, so you continued on the road. You got a DS, and a $50 for a DS, which is funny because now you look back, the DS library is actually really good. Like, did you have that old Like the very first gen DS, like that. Really
No, it was a
bad
DS
one?
Lite.
Good for you.
It was the nice DS Lite.
God,
the white one.
Yeah, I had the OG. I bought the DS the day it came out, and of course back then we were all losing our shit because it was amazing. But man, then when the DS Lite came out, that one you had before looked like trash. It was just janky, and like the hinge sucked, and the lighting was dull. You're just like, man.
It continues to look like trash. With every passing year, it looks more like trash.
Yeah, you just look at new stuff. Well, now, I mean, look at phone screens now. Like, phone screens and, like, the Vita screen alone. Like, you're like, geez, this is getting better than TVs were 10 years ago, let alone, like, you know, a DS screen this big that's, like, 15 years ago. So, yeah, at least they got brighter and better, though. Yeah.
I mean, there was a part... I used to have a job working at a chocolate shop, and so I worked there during the summer, and you know, the people who owned it kind of went on a vacation for like 2 months actually, and so I just was there 3 days a week maintaining it and all that stuff. And because people aren't super into chocolate in the summer, I just mostly I borrowed a Game Boy Advance from a friend, and I bought Minish Cap and played that, and I think I played Link's Awakening again, you know.
Yes.
I'd already played that on normal Game Boy, but yeah, so I mean, I didn't really get into handhelds again until the 3DS came out, and there was, you know, they did that thing where they dropped the price $80 and said, like, okay, everybody that signs into the store before this date gets 10 GBA and NES games or something like that, you know, the ambassador program. And Walmart dropped the price 2 days before the cutoff. So I was like, okay, like, I have to go to Walmart. I'm going to buy this. There's never going to be a better deal.
Basically, like, that would be the most enticing way for you to get your ass to a store and buy a DS, like, or 3DS, like, immediately. Because I remember that was like that was basically Nintendo just saying, sorry, we overcharged all those people who bought it within the first, like, they dropped it so quick. I think it was like, I think it was like 8 or 9 months. Like, it was less than a year.
I think it was like 6. It was definitely less than a year.
It was so quick.
Yeah, and I mean, now it's sold 66 million units, I think, at last announcement.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, like, so, no, the 3DS, like, well, the only thing that's sad now is the 3DS, like, the cool thing about it, which everybody at the time was all about 3D, now 3D is just like, you know, they don't even make 3D TVs anymore. But now, it's funny because now they when they came out with the 2DS, the only problem I thought of, because I used to work at the retail stores, you know, I used to work at Best Buy and stuff, is thinking like, man, if a mom came in and was like looking at a 3DS or a 2DS and didn't see any 2DS games, like, I was like, I get why Nintendo's doing it, because they dropped that thing down to like 80 or $100 or whatever. Like, they made it good, like a good price, but then trying to just, you're confusing the hell out of people trying to buy stuff. But again, us gamers know it, but the average consumer is like, where are all your 2DS games? And then you have to go, they're 3DS, they work, they just don't do 3D. And now Nintendo's even doubling down with like the 2DS XL, which is
the new
hilarious.
2DS XL.
Oh, I'm sorry, I apologize. My grammar's not right. The new 2D. Yeah. It's just, it's funny because they just basically admitted when they came out with that, like, nobody does 3D, but you guys want the powerful system with Amiibo support, here you go. And I'm sure people will buy the hell out of that thing, because I have the original 3DS still, and so does my son. Like, we, at one point in time, me and we had 4 family members, my wife, me, and 2 kids, and we had 3 3DSs in the house. But we all had the OG one, which, again, it sucks because I'm almost done to the point where if Nintendo makes another portable, I won't buy it right away, because I know 2 years down the road they're going to make a way better one, because that XL is considerably better, and then the new one's even better. Yeah.
Do you think that they're going to do that with the Switch?
I think as far as Switch goes, I bet you there will be a variety of Switch, in my opinion, that has, I'm not going to say better performance, but like maybe a better screen or better battery life. But of course, they can't mess with like the size or form factor of it. Like, they still have to be able to allow Joy-Cons to attach and docks to work. So, I mean, they can't really drastically change it. But I think down the road, once batteries become better batteries or better screens, they'll have a new version. And knowing Nintendo,
the new Nintendo Switch.
Yeah, the new Nintendo Switch. Knowing Nintendo, though, they won't let you just buy the Switch. They're going to make you buy a whole new set of Joy-Cons and a whole new dock and all that with it, too. So
I'm sure that they will, I love Nintendo, but they're a very frustrating company.
Yeah, I will say I have a Switch. I traded in all my Wii U stuff, got a Switch. I like the Switch.
Wii or Wii U?
I beat Zelda. And since then, I'm waiting for Mario.
Yeah, I'm the same. I mean, I'm excited to get Axiom Verge on it in a few months.
Right.
I guess in August. But yeah, I'm gonna eventually go back and play the Zelda DLC. I'm kind of not in the mood right now. I put 140 hours into it before beating it. I loved it, but I'm playing a bunch of smaller games that I got on Steam. So
yeah, we play that backlog instead of like just continuing to play that one game over and over and over again.
Yeah.
So going back, did you basically then just kind of stick the Nintendo route? Did you ever go like PlayStation or Xbox route or anything?
Well, so yeah, the first console that I ever bought totally by myself was the original Xbox, and I got the Halo edition, or the Halo 2 edition, I think. It was that really cool transparent green one.
Right.
Apparently with me, if you make a transparent system or controller, I will buy it. So, so
Nintendo is going to get on that. They're going to hear this and just make a bunch of transparent stuff.
I would buy another 3DS if they made a transparent one. I already have two, and I sold one to a friend. So.
There you go.
But yeah, so I got the original Xbox to play Halo 2 and the original Halo, Fable. I don't remember. A bunch of games. I have them sitting over there too.
I love how you're like, I don't remember. Let me look at my shelf real fast to take a look. What did I play back then?
But yeah, I mean, my love of Nintendo kind of had a resurgence, I think once the Wii came out, really. For some reason. I mean, I was really excited about, the idea of controlling games in a different way, like a lot of people probably. And, I mean, I was excited about Zelda. My brother bought a GameCube, and I played some of it, but I didn't own one myself. So, yeah, I became a much bigger Nintendo fanboy in the age of the Wii and DS.
Did you have to fight any mothers at a Walmart to get a Wii? Or do you remember
Actually, you know what?
Like, do you remember like everybody has that horror story of how they ended up having to get their Wii. Do you remember yours?
Yes, I do very well. So I worked at a GameStop, actually, that summer. And so I went into work, and the manager was like, "You want a Wii, right?" And I was like, "Yeah, of course. Like, absolutely." And so he's like, "Okay, there's one in the back. It's reserved for you. Like, we're not going to sell it." And people were just coming in all the time asking, like, "Do you have a Wii U?" They were calling. And this one woman called, and I remember picking up the phone, and she was like, "Hi, do you guys have a Wii?" And I said, "No, I'm sorry, we don't have any left." And she said, "Are you sure? Because I promised my son a Wii this Christmas instead of a father."
Jesus Christ.
And I said, "No, we don't have one. I'm sorry." And I hung up, and I took it myself.
Jesus.
Such was my hunger for Zelda.
Instead of a father. Wow. Yeah. Wow. I mean, I'm not going to say she was lying, but that's some like next level shit if she was. Like,
I know.
I wonder if she was calling like, man, if I come up with the saddest story I can think of.
I know. Like,
then let me see what happens.
She might have been telling the truth, but I don't know.
She might have been, or she like. It's even sadder if she. I'm not. It would be sadder if that was the truth. Like, damn, dude, really? I had a lady similar to when I worked at Game Crazy with the 360 launch. We weren't supposed to hold them for anybody, and this lady though, she had a son, and I knew she came in all the time and bought like everything, and she also came in all the time driving a new car. Like, I don't know what she did for a job, but obviously she was well off. And like, I remember her calling in, and she's like, "Oh, this is so and so," and I remember her, and she's like, "Do you guys have any 360s?" And I'm like, "Yeah, we do." And she goes, "Would it be possible for you to hold one?" And I was sitting there going, like, in my head thinking, like, no, but I know this lady's probably going to buy every single thing with this thing instead of that clown that comes in, buys a 360 and leaves and like doesn't buy a game. I was like, you know what? I will hold one for you. I know you. You're always great. And she literally came in and bought every launch game.
Wow.
The system, 2 other controllers, chargers. Like, she bought the awful wireless G like Wi-Fi adapter. Like, she literally spent like over $1,000 at the store, and I was just like, that's the only reason why I would hold things for her. But it was a similar situation where she had a sad story. She's like, "Are there any games in here that don't involve shootings?" I'm like, "Well, yeah." And I showed her those games, and she's like, "Yeah, I don't want my son seeing anything like that because his father was just murdered. He was shot." I was like, "Oh my God."
Oh my God.
And that's the same thing. Like, when you just said that father thing, that brought that up to me. And I was like, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry to hear that." She goes, "No, it's okay. Don't worry about it." Like, obviously, It sounded so super like gangster, like mob hit style. Like she had that kind of like look to her. I was like, I'm not going to question you. I'm just going to go, okay, I'm really sorry. I'll show you games that don't involve any shootings.
Yeah, you can sell her Cameo, and I don't remember what else was in the Xbox 360 launch. Viva Pinata? Was that launch? I don't remember.
No, it was like launch was like Condemned.
Yeah.
It was Condemned.
That game doesn't
Cameo.
have much shooting.
No, not really. There was a Need for Speed game at launch. I think there was a Burnout. I think it was Revenge. Might have been launch or like launch window. But then there was Perfect Dark, which I was like, well, yeah, for sure that has shooting. And she's just like, okay, well maybe we'll hold off on that for now, just because I guess it like recently happened, and she was terrified for her son to say that. Which again, granted, her son though was like 7, like he was real young, but she was one of those moms that's just like, I'll buy you whatever you want just to make you happy. And again, that's the only reason why I held it for her, because I knew it was going to happen. So then you had the Wii. Do you remember specific games on the Wii? Because I mean, the Wii was like the time where there was some good games, like some very memorable games, but then there was a ton of trash on that console.
There was definitely a ton of trash. I mean, I remember trying out L-Bits, and I was really excited about that, and that was a pretty big letdown.
Right.
But
did you basically get Twilight Princess at launch like everybody else did?
Yeah. Well, I bought Twilight Princess like the day that it came out, and then I wasn't able to get a Wii for like 2 or 3 months after.
Right.
Until, it was time. Well, so I went away to college, right? And when I came back for winter vacation, I worked at GameStop. So that's when I knew that I was going to get a Wii.
Right.
So I just like had this box sitting in my room for, a couple months, staring at it longingly. But yeah, I mean, I remember Metroid Prime 3. I remember with, the Wiimote and the nunchuck. The first time you get the grappling hook, I remember flicking the nunchuck out to grapple something and just like laughing hysterically because it was such a cool,
it's
that's my hand, like it really worked, So I remember that really. That made a huge impression on me. And I like the pointer controls in that. I really think that is a very, very accurate way to shoot a gun in a game or point at something. It mimics mouse control, so that's great. I'm surprised that didn't catch on a little bit better.
I think if the tracking on it was perfect, I think it would have. But depending on the situation and the lighting and where you had your sensor bar, and
that's
there
true. That's true.
Random other items that were throwing off the sensors, like that
candles.
was the only problem. Yeah, candles and stuff like that would be the one thing. Which, by the way, I mean, if you're playing a TV but in front of you there's candles, I don't know what trying to mood you're trying to set or whatever. But that's the only thing. Like I think if it was, and that was when they eventually came out with like Wii Motion Plus, where it was like pretty accurate one-to-one movement, I just thought it was funny because when you first saw those commercials, they made it so drastic. Like they showed people doing Zelda, like making their arms move so damn much. Then when you actually get the system, you realize, well, I can just sit on the couch and kind of wiggle my wrist a bit and it works still just as much, but it didn't look as cool. But then again, after a while, you're actually getting tired. You're like, I don't want to swing my arms this damn wide this time. I'm just gonna sit here and do this.
I definitely hurt my wrist playing Skyward Sword. I mean, I had to get a wrist, like a little thing from like CVS, to put around
like
my
the wrist guards,
because like swinging that thing,
right?
It hurt after a while.
I'm sure people have, Wii tennis elbows, that they're. That was also the funny thing too, because that was the console that I remember working at Best Buy and like a literally elderly couple coming in and being like, I want a Wii. I was like, yeah, really? All right. And then like they picked out all the fitness games, all like the Waggle sports games, and that was about it. But that was also, it's funny because now when people try to get rid of the Wii, like when you see them selling them on like Facebook or Craigslist or any of those like apps, they always have like 900 accessories with them. Like they come with like the baseball bats and the golf club, and it's just like, yeah, that was cool, but you really bought those accessories, man. Like I could never do that. Like,
why did you do that? Yeah.
Right.
What's the point?
But again, if people are stupid and somebody's going to buy it, people will make it. They're not going to.
They really wanted to get in the game, They wanted to really be playing tennis.
Absolutely. I don't know. Just like when Nintendo thought you were going to put your Wii U controller on the ground to hit a golf ball. Remember that?
Yeah. That never panned out.
All right, I'm not putting this like probably $150, $200 controller on the ground for like my 2-year-old to run and just stomp on. That would be real fun.
Yeah, that would not be optimal.
So then you just kind of stuck with Nintendo then going through? So like you had Wii and then you just went straight to kind of like Wii U and just kind of stuck that route?
Well, I mean, I got a 360 as like a college graduation present from my family, and Halo and Fable. I don't remember what else. A bunch of other games. But I mean, I don't know. So in college, I was like walking around, and I took some notes before the show. Things that I thought you might find interesting. And so I was walking around in college, and I went to University of Rochester, and they have a what is it called? Cognitive and Behavioral Sciences or something. And so there was all these posters that was like, oh, like, do you play shooters? Do you play like fast-paced video games? Like, we'll pay you X amount of dollars and study you and write papers and stuff. Nice. So I got involved in like all these like psychological studies and stuff like that because of this. You would go and the experiments would be like you'd be looking at a screen and there'd be like static and some percentage of the dots. This is just one example of the kind of studies. And like some percentage of the dots would be moving right or left, and you'd have to say like they're moving right or left. And so they were studying people that played Twitch fast-paced action games and people who didn't play any video games, and they were comparing them. Seeing who had better visual perception and stuff like that. Right. There was also ones. I don't know. It was all kinds of stuff. There was ones where like you had to like you wore this helmet kind of and it tracked your eye movement, and you would have to select things from a screen. They'd be like select the one that doesn't belong or things like that. I don't really remember, but I made like a couple $1,000s doing that over the course of a few years. It was enough money to really go to
about that, right?
Yeah, it was pretty great.
You actually got one of those ads that says, "Do you want to get paid to play video games?" Like most of those ads are garbage, and yours is like legit in a way. Well,
very rarely was it like actually playing video games. Although that did happen. I think I got credit in a psychology class for doing that. It was like you played a shooter, and then they like asked you how you felt afterwards.
They show you ink blots. Like, how does this make you feel?
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
As long as you weren't one of those awful studies that comes out and says like, video games make people more violent. Like all those soccer moms want to say those studies happen and everything. So as long as you didn't contribute to one of those, I think we're good.
No, it's all like behavioral and cognitive sciences. So like it's just about like visual processing and audio processing and stuff like that.
Right.
The guy who I worked with a lot, his name was C. Sean Green. So I don't know, you can look him up and probably find his papers and stuff. I remember like IGN reporting on, University of Rochester releases this study, and I was like, I definitely did. I'm definitely part of the data set for that study.
That's great.
So I thought that was really cool. So of course, from there was a medical school attached to the school, to my college. And so then I started doing medical studies, and those were interesting for different reasons.
Yeah, I can imagine those. Were, like, I love. I've seen like just comedies or like dramas how the people are like, you're not supposed to do more than one, and there's people like, I've done like 4 at the same time. I'm like, probably those would scare the hell out of me. Like, hold on, wait, what are you doing to me? Oh, this one's gonna do this one's gonna do this. But again, man, if you got paid for it, I mean, you're an adult. Cool. You can do what you want, right? That's why you sign waivers.
Yeah, I got a couple experimental flu vaccines and stuff, all because I started, playing video games at a young age. I got into this whole world of fun ways to make money at college.
Right? You can't complain about that and everything. I remember there was a video online that recently came out. I don't remember if Kotaku did the article or not, but it was like tracking a person's eyes, just showing like it was just cameras on their eyes as they were playing Overwatch. And you just see eyes like just moving all over the screen. You're like, holy shit, do my eyes do the same thing when I play? Like, that's crazy. Like, yeah, it's just you don't realize how much movement your eyes are doing and how much your brain is processing as you're playing those games, especially if you think about like pro players. Like, imagine how theirs are.
And I mean, there's been studies done that show like people who play GTA and stuff have better mapping skills, like in their mind, like they're able to pick their way through a city easier and things like that. And I mean, honestly, like I feel like I've had kind of evidence in my life that playing video games has helped out in that kind of thinking. Not necessarily mapping, but just like puzzle solving and stuff like that. So I have a bachelor's in chemistry and a PhD in material science. And so when I was in college...
I'm talking to a doctor? Is that what you just said? No.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I am. I'm talking to a doctor. I made it. I got a doctor on the show.
Not medical doctor.
Still,
PhD.
it doesn't matter. You have a PhD. I don't care. I'll call you doctor. I'm going to put that. Watch me put that in the title. I'm going to put that and just see how many more downloads I get when it says doctor into the name. It's going to be like, whoa, wait, you got a doctor on? I did.
You will be the only other person to call me doctor. I mean, we met on the Comedy Button Facebook group, right? So I'm a big fan of the Geek Box with Ryan Scott, and I often write into them and ask questions, and so they also call me Dr. Epstein.
Well,
they're the only people.
Again, it's funny because it's like, and for me, if I busted my ass and went to school and got a PhD, I would want doctor on I don't care what it is. I would want that shit on like my ID. I put it on business cards, credit cards. And again, it doesn't matter what you're a doctor of. You busted your ass and got a PhD, dude. You're good for you.
Thank you. Yeah, it's fun. I mean, mostly it only comes up on the Geek Box, and when I buy flights and stuff, it says doctor, and iTunes addresses me as Dr. Epstein now when I buy stuff.
Exactly. If there was a field for me to put in doctor, it would have it on there. Like, I wouldn't care. Because, I mean, dude, that's, again, though, it's like, even though you're not a medical doctor, it doesn't matter. You got a PhD in something, dude. That's, like, super something to be proud of. So, now that obviously, you're more of an adult now. You're not a little kid who has all the time in the world. Do you still play games often, would you say? Or is it, like, limited down and stuff?
Absolutely. But, let me go back real quick.
Yes.
So what I was going to say is, so I was taking organic chemistry in undergrad, and I remember the kind of thinking that it would take to do, like, problem sets and stuff reminded me of the problem solving and stuff that I was doing in a game called Soul Reaver, which is, like, my favorite. One of my favorite game series, the Legacy of Kain series. There were these block puzzles where, like, you knew what the answer had to be, you had all the tools in front of you, and you had to just kind of, like, I don't know, roll the blocks a certain way so that you could get them into a certain position and roll them into the wall or whatever and complete this picture. And that, I don't know, it just the style of thinking reminded me of that. So I always felt like video games had trained me and my mind for the better, in either image processing or audio processing or just kind of problem-solving skills. So I always, I don't know, it always pissed me off when people were like, oh, they rot your brain. It's like, no, they absolutely don't. Well, you're thinking so much.
Right. There's evidence of the non-rotting brains when Brain Age came out, and that was a big-ass thing where, like, adults who did not play any other game, they bought a DS just to play Brain Age. Like, that was a big thing, too. Like, and I would say most, like, gamers that are out there and everything would kind of say, I would hope they would say gaming has helped them. Like, I would have a very hard time believing, like, somebody plays games and goes, why did I do that? That was such a waste of time. Like, obviously you get enjoyment out of it, but also, too, like, for me, for example, I work on the phones and I'm able to multitask and, like, talk to people while listening, while doing this. And I don't know if I contribute that to gaming or not, but, like, my brain obviously is, when you play a game, especially a game that has strategy involved or, like, timing and, like, things, you have to have your brain moving a million miles an hour. So I kind of contribute that to, like, well, I'm able to multitask really well or do all of that because of me playing games. Like, my family here, we'll play card games. And as soon as I learn the rules and know the rules, I'm like, okay. And then I end up winning quite often, even if I've never played the game. And they get all pissed off, like, you always win. I'm like, well, I've had to adapt to new rules in games since I was 6. What do you want me to do? Like, I'm good at video games. I'm not saying, like, oh, I'm so awesome at board games or anything like that. But just my family tends to, like, bring over a card game. I'm like, what are the rules? And they tell me, I'm like, okay. And then I end up winning on it, and they get all mad. But then they lately, it hasn't happened as much because I haven't played too many of them, newer ones. But that was a trend for a while where they're kind of like, yeah, he's gonna be winning this game. Watch, so that's fine. But like no. And again, there's puzzle games out there that are sometimes more frustrating than fun. Like puzzle games get to a point where you're just like, how the hell am I doing this, and why am I playing this? I'm getting pissed off.
Well, so just last night, my girlfriend and I started playing Papers, Please, and I was like, I understand that this is an artistic statement, and I appreciate it for that, but this is not the kind of game I want to play. Like, it's all about, like, looking through a bunch of documents really fast and matching up information and, like, checking numbers and shit like that. And have you heard of Papers, Please?
I personally haven't. No, I've heard the name. Okay. I believe I've heard the name of it, but not the concept of it or, like, what the game is itself.
So the how it works is, or the story, I guess, is that you are it's basically Russia. It's not called Russia, but you're in Soviet Russia, essentially, and you're a border you're like the guy at the border who checks documents. Right. And you make the more people you pass through, the more money you make. But, you know, there's the risk of letting in somebody who's going to blow up the guard that's behind you and stuff like that, you know? And so your family is in government apartments, and you have to make enough money to pay rent and get food. And, you know, my son got sick last night, and then very sick because I didn't make enough money to get him medicine.
Oh, no.
And basically, and so like you're like trying to get as many people through as possible,
while being safe
but
about
like
it.
while being safe about it. You can't let people through that are gonna you know, their documents aren't right and stuff like that. You get citations and docked pay and stuff like that. So I was like, oh my god, we got through like 5 or 6 days of this game within this game, you know, which was like maybe 45 minutes of gameplay. I was like, I appreciate this, but this is not my kind of game. Meanwhile, The Witness is probably definitely one of my top 5 favorite games ever. The Jonathan Blow game that came out in 2016. Yeah, so
that's
I really
another
love
one
that.
of those puzzle games that I was hearing. Like, obviously, I heard it's awesome. Like, IGN reviewed it. I think they gave it a 10. Like,
they did give it a 10. Yeah,
they said it was awesome. But then it's also
I would also give it a 10.
Like, it's one of those that I'm not saying I'm not into the puzzle games most. I remember playing Myst. Like, that was the only PC game I remember playing. But like, also too, back then, like, you got to a certain point where if you sucked, or if you didn't pay attention, or if you just weren't as good at puzzle games, there wasn't an internet or a readily available source you could quickly figure it out. But yeah, like everybody says, The Witness is awesome. And as far as puzzle games, I haven't played too many lately.
Yeah. Well, if you are interested in puzzle games, The Witness is a really, really interesting, great one. I mean, I could go grab it and show you. I have like a notebook that I was writing things down, and it's just like 6 pages of just insane people drawings. You know, like
you look like a person that got stuck on the island, and you it's lost with all the hieroglyphs on the wall, like all the numbers.
It's like in Seven, where they get into the killer's apartment and they have all those books. You know, like
exactly.
It's just really crazy.
You just look like that, except for it's for a video game. But I mean, I remember like people. Back before, again, the internet, they had to draw their own maps. They had to remember things. They had to, do those types of things and everything still. But it's not crazy, but it's just rare to find a game that does that now, because most people will just resort to the internet. It's like, oh, I got stuck. Let me go to this puzzle and Google it. Like, it sucks, but I mean, in a certain sense, like, I've only done that in games lately. Like once or twice. I get to a certain thing and I'm like, seriously, what the fuck do I need to do right now? And I'm sitting there looking and looking and looking. I'm like, I have to do this.
If I'm sitting there and I'm not frustrated and I'm not having fun and I'm like, I want to see more of this game, you know, I'm just going to look it up at that point. Like if it's a kind of game, so in The Witness, one of the great things is that the entire island is open to you. And if you reach a puzzle that you can't figure out, it's really easy to walk away and do something else and come back to it later. You know, it rarely like puts you in a choke point, you know?
Right.
So that's something that I really appreciated about the game.
And that's that cool exploration part of it, because like you have access to all of it, but unless you understand things or unless you've built yourself up to a certain thing, like you don't really know how to get to that point and everything. And that's kind of how I liked how in Zelda, like the latest Zelda, how they kind of did that
Breath of the Wild.
Yeah, so it's kind of like you have access to every shrine, but you'll go